Hello. So the end of November, start of December, and the second monthly kind of Bricklink Store sales recap, following the same format as last month, taking a look at the data that has been the month that has gone, and what an eventful month it certainly was. We had the great Bricklink hack and all of the scandals that went with that, which brought out the very best and the very worst in an awful lot of people, and showed up an awful lot of kind of flaws in people's systems and backups, and how much people rely on Bricklink in terms of not really looking at Brickowl and things like that. But it was an interesting learning all around, and kind of made a lot of sellers, I think, refocus on their processes, the things that they do. Certainly for me, kind of made me shift into doing some of the jobs that I'd put off, like sorting out some used and things like that. I set myself some lofty goals. They soon fell on their ass, but it certainly was interesting. Through the month, we passed 200,000 parts. We've gone past 230,000 parts today, as of Tuesday, the 5th of December. Huge landmarks, taking us into the top 30 odd of Australian stores, still hovering around that 7-8 in WA. A long way to go to be challenging anyone above us, but a monumental rise in the 4 or 5 months that this has been going. As I said, kind of the Bricklink hack had me scrambling around, sorting out some used parts that had been kicking around for a long time, and I had some ambitious goals of working my way through 2 massive tubs of that. It soon became very evident that doing that was like madness. Just the actual recreating of a new parts store in used is impossible, but managing it and having it not chew too much time was an important factor, and it has brought a decent amount of sales, as we'll see in some of the stats further on. I've parked that at the end of this month, going into the end of the year, just to focus on growth and variety and volume, but we'll get back to it in the new year. And then our first Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and the learnings from that in terms of having kind of spent up big on parts myself, not having available funds to cash in on some fantastic deals, and also what that does to buyer behaviour prior to it, which if you've been watching the vlogs, you will be familiar with. So, as I've said, we've gone past the 230 as of today, but this is what the month has kind of looked like as of the weekend just past. A fairly steady rise. Lots has been pretty good. Items obviously goes up and down depending on the orders that you get and what you can actually get into the store. Gone are the days, I think, where we'll see these massive leaps. It's just not feasible now to make those massive leaps in terms of quantity, not without huge investment, and that's just not possible when you get to this scale. It's going to be a much more gradual arc as we go, and more strategic in terms of adding lots. But it's interesting to note that I still firmly believe the balance between volume of parts and variety of parts is key. Whilst a lot of people will talk about variety being king, I still think it is a medium between the two. So October we kind of dealt with last time. November saw a couple of very strong weeks in terms of parts adding, and a couple of more standard weeks that followed the more October pattern. What that meant was the net increase was 49,500 parts over the month, and as you can see from the parts out, which are the red ones, it's up and down. It's fairly inconsistent in terms of there being a flat curve to it, but it's steady, which is good, and it's steadily increasing, whereas in October our highs were high 4s to low 4s. Now it's mid 5s to low 5s, so it's kind of bumping up, and if we can see that kind of trend continue through December, which I know will be difficult because of the Christmas period, and I'm actually going to be closing the store for like a little while whilst we have family here, but it'll be an interesting month just to see whether or not A lot of people will be off for a period of time as well, so they'll have time on their hands. Will that increase spend, or will people be spending on their own families and things like that? It'll be an interesting learning period for sure. This one just demonstrates kind of that arc is starting to kind of even out, whereas we've seen very rapid rises versus what I originally thought would be my monthly trajectory forecast. We've seen some huge leaps, but it is starting to just curve off a little bit, and we'll see how this tracks over the next few months as we find our feet, get a bit more savvy, understand the market a bit more, know what parts sell. The introduction by suggestion of Game of Troll about kind of covering the top 5 selling parts each week is really good, because it is about that. What is selling well? What are people after? What are the hot topics? What are the hot parts? And some of the goals for the December month feed into that as well. So sales by platform is a big shift from last month. Brickowl has really come into life, and much of that was driven by the Bricklink being down. Brickowl has been much more steady than it was through October. Almost consistently a sale or more every day, and that has resulted in a 27% share of sales, up from 10%, which equates to 161% increase in Brickowl sales, which is phenomenal, given that the only real change that I did there was link it to Rebrickable. Didn't realize you could do that. Found it in the settings tab, which I covered in one of my vlogs. But it has made a big difference. There's been a number of sales coming from that. Bricklink, still the lion's share, sitting at 73%. Used versus new, 6% of those sales have come from used, which is good considering we're only talking about one cabinet worth of that. It's not a large portion of the store, and I never see it being. It's just unmanageable in the space that I've got. I can't recreate the same scale of operation for used as I can for new, so I'm happy with that. Yes, I'd like that to grow to perhaps more around the 10%, but it's a good start for the first month of it being in action. In terms of total sales, the month on a whole has been down, whether that's the impact of Bricklink. If we were hitting 5 point something sales a day and we were down for 5 days, then we would have been up, but that's the reality, right? You can't affect all of the factors that impact upon you. So from 180 last month, we're down to 171, which is a drop of 5%. Items sold is down by 3.5%. Starts to look a little bit scary, but we're talking fractions really. And when you consider with it that Bricklink was out of it, and it is such a high proportion of sales for 5 days, then it's fairly understandable and still a very credible month's results. Average sales again was down fractionally from 5.8 to 5.7. The value was significantly down to 44.94 from 51. There's been a comment or two on the vlogs about how good sales average that is. So I don't know how that sits with other people. I'm very pleased with it, don't get me wrong. Some sales are very small, some sales are very big. It is what it is, and all are very, very welcome. So that's kind of how we tracked through the month. And this kind of really does demonstrate how strong Brickowl has been. Anyone that remembers last month's or has watched last month's will know there was days after days after days where Brickowl didn't feature. And, there is only 4 days, there's the 2 days prior to Bricklink being down, and then there is the 17th and 21st when Brickowl didn't do any sales. Other than that, it has been so consistent, which is fantastic. I'm really pleased with that. Other than that, Brickowl has been pretty good. And again, it's no rhyme or reason on when those strong sales days are. Before, during, after the weekend, there is no pattern showing to me so far. Still, a lot of orders come evening, so people on the east coast of Australia are shopping very late at night, but equally there's been a lot coming early afternoon this month. So, again, I can't learn much from that in terms of when to upload, when to have things out. It's just a case of being ready and able to get things out as quickly as I can. So revenue from September, October, November, we are down in November, but clearly we are way up on September's from Bricklink, whereas November is an increase on October, which was down from September. So in fact, November's is probably stronger than September and October collectively on Brickowl, which is a phenomenal result, and it'll be interesting to see how that tracks moving forward, whether or not people have been spooked by the hack on Bricklink, or whether it was just a case of people that had never tried the site. I've heard on forums people much prefer the interface and the shopping experience. People like the fact that it's independent and it's not Lego owned, so therefore has that independence and things like that. Whatever floats your boat. Those retailers that weren't on it before, a lot more are, so it's helped it kind of push it along, which is a great thing, and maybe that's why that 1,282 is such a good figure through November. In terms of the store itself, where is it figuring? We've actually fallen a place on the Western Australian front. Brictorious has appeared. Whether I missed that last month, whether they were closed and they didn't show up in the listing, I'm not entirely sure, but they've popped up, and at 422,000 parts jumped right into that fifth space. Brick Warehouse remains Australia's largest store by a fair old margin. There's a couple of stores tipping on the 900,000 now that I noticed, so they're going to have some close competition in the next month or two, I would say. Certainly in the new year, it'll be interesting to see if they can retain that as the biggest store. But in the wider scope of things, we have climbed 7 places into 34th place. We're a little way off 33, where we're standing at the moment at 231. So we've got a few more thousand parts to get in to jump over Al's brick shed, and then there's quite a leap as we get into the 250,000 pluses. It starts to get quite spaced out after that as you rise into the top 20, which is a long way off. But it's interesting to see how kind of when we were in the 40s, it was very congested, and as we're climbing up a little bit, it's starting to get way more spaced out. In terms of the month's kind of forecast versus actuals, it's been a bit of a blowout, to be honest, and that's down to me spending way more in Bricklink purchases and Lego retail purchases than had planned, and not reaching last month's sales target, sales level, and certainly not surpassing it as I had forecast. So the net result of that was that we instigated some eBay sales to balance the books, which did deliver a profit, which was the important thing. It leaves us in a good profit at the end of the first quarter. Are we at the end of the first quarter? No, we're in month. Are we in month 4? 4 or 5? Could be month 4. So a third of the year done, I think. July, August, September, October, November. Is that 5 months? Can't do the maths, which is why I have spreadsheets to do it for me. But as you can see there, kind of packaging costs were under budget, storage costs were over, office supplies under, postage costs were under, but only just. Facebook Marketplace hit target. Woohoo! Fees were over, mainly driven by Brickowl being such a big hit. Bricklink purchases went to town, lost control there. Lego retail also lost control. I'm ashamed of myself, I really am, but it was great fun. Miscellaneous expenses, didn't spend any. Bricklink sales down, as you know. Brickowl was up, so they kind of balanced it out. And then eBay, as I said, kind of selling sales sets that I had in stock. Given that they were already purchased, there's kind of not tracked the cost of those, so it's kind of like a win-win. But it does kind of tilt the books a little bit, which leaves us December, which I've not forecast because I really have no idea what to expect from December. with the store being closed whilst we have family here, it being the Christmas period, the New Year period, who knows what kind of buyer behaviour to expect during that period. But I'm glad to be ahead. I'm glad we're up. Certainly is reassuring to know that you can still spend what is an enormous amount of money and still not break the bank. So in terms of moving forward through December, you know how I like to set some goals. I want to go through and start doing audits of the inventory. It's been clear that I've been short of a few items when I've been doing orders, and kind of Brick Freedom saying I'm out of a thing when I'm looking at a drawer and I can see that there's multiples in there. So I need to do a little bit of auditing of things just to make sure that my inventory is nice and tight. I definitely need to manage budget this month way better, given the uncertainty of buyer behaviour and closing the store for a bit. So that's a kind of a curb yourself, boy, curb yourself. Control your urges to restock and make sure that people have got what they want to buy. I also want to start planning a little bit more around what sets I want to get in from that variety point of view. Obviously, I've got a fairly decent understanding of what parts sell and what sell frequently and what price you can get them for, whether that's locally or internationally. But having a look further afield in terms of what sets would be interesting to purchase to add variety, knowing that there's sales coming up, I want to spend a little bit of time looking at that and new sets that are coming out, which ones would be adding interesting minifigures, interesting parts, things like that. And I also want to spend a little bit of time looking through Rebrickable, given that I've linked that into Brickowl, and it has delivered probably half a dozen or more sales of unusual parts as well, and good orders. So kind of just looking what is a good mark, I know like the fun door hauler and stuff like that, modulars, things like that. It might be an interesting kind of process just to understand what's going on Rebrickable a little bit more. Kind of, I used it when I was kind of getting back into Lego properly, and before I even started the store, I was rebuilding sets, and then I kind of made kind of like a Battlestar Galactica Viper, and I made the Bad Batch helmets and things like that. So I was into it in that sense for my own kind of the things that I was into, but kind of having a look what are the popular Rebrickable sets and instructions and things like that might be interested in terms of informing inventory purchasing decisions. And that's it, kind of another month gone, another whole batch of learnings, another fascinating month, another ups and downs. Black Friday, as I kind of mentioned at the top, was a really quiet period leading up to Black Friday. I didn't really talk about it at this chart. Kind of the week kind of leading up to Black Friday was really quiet. It was really quiet. Kind of that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th was super quiet. There was like one order, two orders. It was quite a drop off. Obviously, people kind of just holding back, waiting to purchase sets on deals, and then it just went back to normal, which was great. But again, a thing to learn and a thing to be aware of, that there are some fantastic deals. It's the first year I've really paid attention to it. So next year I'll be better informed in terms of, okay, even Lego.com had some really good deals, and being aware of that is something for next year. So that's it. November, done and dusted, almost to December. I hope you found this informative. If you did, please do like it, share it. Make sure you subscribe for more updates in the future, and I'll see you next time.